add up to all of this. Whatever comes to your mind, whatever little you have understood when you were there.
So we can say supportive behavior is required where maximum times we know that we have a good approach towards anything, that we know everything. But supportive is very important, so that for example, I am having everything but it's not polished, it's not grown up, it's not clear. So if I have to grow, somebody is behind me who will provide me any type of style, and that will be the supportive behavior towards me, and I'll do best. And the directive, we can say that where we directly trying to say you have to be like this, you have to be like this, I can say only I'll give directions to you.
Right.
So rest, I don't know whether will you reach, but I'm only directing you.
Right.
So I mean,
wonderful. Thank you so much.
thank you, sir.
Just to add to what Shaheen said, in the case of directive behavior, I give directions. Let's say, for example, that you want the student to do an experiment. You want the student to go to the lab and perform an experiment. You just give directions sitting in your classroom or wherever you sit. And then say, refer to page number 45, go do the experiment and come back to me. That is typically a directive behavior. Whereas in supportive behavior, go to page 48 and do this experiment and tell me where you have a problem. And be with the child when the child does the experiment to find out, are you getting stuck anywhere? What will happen if you try this a little more? What will happen if you take this particular solution and add it to this? What will happen if you try this option over this option? Just keep asking questions and encourage the cognitive thinking of the person to move it higher. That is supportive behavior. Anything that is supportive in nature, any behavior that's supportive in nature, which allows the child to think beyond the current level of thinking. That's supportive behavior. Directive behavior is you do all the thinking, give directions, and let the person follow instructions and operationalize it. So that's a fundamental difference between directive behavior and supportive behavior. Essentially meaning that's a difference between thinking and execution. In the case of guiding, I do all the thinking and ask my student to execute. In the case of supportive, I allow the student to think and I support the thinking, which means I allow the student to flourish. So that when the student starts thinking, the student is really able to understand, how do I move from point A to point B? How do I further my thinking? So when I'm supporting, I'm also trying to understand where is the student finding difficulty and helping the student to overcome that difficulty so that the student is able to move further. Let's take a very simple case. Suppose you're talking about 5 tables and one student is able to pick it up very sharp and then he's able to reproduce that. There's another student who is not able to pick up that and recite that 5 tables. So if you are using directive behavior, you just go tell the student, write this 25 times and come back to me tomorrow morning. Which means you are asking the student to just write down the 5 tables 25 times. Not really helping the student to understand how this writing is going to help the student get that etched in memory. On the other hand, sit with the student and understand, what did you do? How did you try to learn the 5 tables? Why didn't you try this way? Why didn't you say that 5 times? Why didn't you write this 2 times? Whatever is the methodology you want to give. Suppose you find out the difficulty the student is having and help the student overcome the difficulty. One, the student gets encouraged to start doing something different. And when the student starts seeing benefits, the student is more encouraged to do something. This is what happens in the person. So when you encourage more, the motivation level is higher. When the motivation level is higher, the interest to learn something more is more, the effort is more. When I'm motivated, I put in more effort. But I'm doing it just because tomorrow if I don't write this, the teacher is going to punish me. If that is the thinking I have, then I'm going to do it for the sake of not being punished by the teacher. Whereas when you encourage me, when you encourage the student gets motivated Because of that motivation, the student wants to learn and be on top. So that's the fundamental difference between directive behavior and supportive behavior. Pausing here for questions, please. Feel free to share your thoughts, share your questions. I can help you further. And if you want to understand why and how it happens, I'll go a little bit of neuroscience here so that you understand what happens. In our brain, which is common for anybody whose brain is working, in our brain, there are positive chemicals that get secreted whenever you do something which is motivating. And that chemical is allowing you to be a lot more fresh and free and motivated. So whenever you encourage them, you are inducing the positive chemicals to get secreted in the brain, and the student becomes more motivated. When you are in directive behavior, this hormone does not get secreted. Because the hormone does not get secreted, the student is less motivated. So supportive behavior allows the brain to secrete that positive hormone or motivational hormone, which allows the child to feel motivated, and because of it, the student is more inclined to learn as opposed to directive behavior. Any questions, please? Is that concept clear, or are there any doubts in the concept?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. That's what happens in our brain. So it's always important for us to move from guiding towards encouraging to empowering. Every student that I work with, I need to find ways by which you can move. And that's the fundamental difference between teaching and facilitation. Moving a little further, this should be our way of move. Move away as far as possible from guiding towards encouraging. That's when you facilitate a conversation rather than telling them what to do. Fundamentally move from a paradigm of telling to a paradigm of asking. Paradigm of telling to a paradigm of experience, experimentation. Get them to experiment, get them to think, allow their cognitive brain to start working. The more you allow that brain to work, like I said last time, the neurons start firing. When the neurons start firing, a lot of new things get settled in the brain. And that's how they learn. So the more encouragement you give to them, the more they will learn. I'm not saying don't use directive behavior, supplement it with supportive behavior. You have to be directive for disciplinary sake. You have to be directive for instruction sake. And beyond that, get them into supportive behavior so that they know that my teacher is there to support me, I can experiment. That's where you allow them to explore. And when they explore in their own world, they'll start learning a little more. So see if you can slowly start moving away from guiding towards encouraging, towards empowering. That should be the path that you may want to look at when you are transiting from one style of working with children to another style of working with children. So can I have some thoughts around how you people do it now? And do you see supportive behavior in the way you do it? Or do you see directional behavior in the way you are conducting your sessions? It's open to anybody who wants to answer that question.
Yes, sir. I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is a poem in language, a very simple poem. So what I thought last week, I asked them to present in their own way. They can use in their own method. They can recitate and explain the poem, or they can do the PPT. So I asked who can do in what way. So each child has shown interest in different way of explaining that poem. So I have given them the freedom and a little guidance also. The gist of the poem I just told so that they can understand. So now many children have done the PPT very nicely, which made my work also easy. And now they have started. No, now already two children have spoken yesterday. So again Monday again still I am going to give each child to speak. So to manage the time, I have told them to explain only one paragraph in their own style. So that I also can manage the time, and they have done in different ways.
Wonderful. Now, just a thought. How much are you pushing them a little more in the cognitive thinking?
Yes, in PPT, when they have done the PPT, they have sent to me before speaking. Many children. So there, how to do the introduction and all. So little corrections I have told them before doing in the class. So they have corrected themselves and presented in the class very nicely. Two children have done already. Still 20 more students are supposed to do. They are sending their ideas, what they have prepared, to me beforehand. So there, little more, any suggestions I'm going to give over the phone to the individual child. So in the class, they are going to do according to the way how everyone understands.
Very good. So procedurally, you can guide them. But in the thinking, suppose a student is saying ABC, why can't it be D? What will happen if you want to do one step higher? Push them in the cognitive. That's the encouraging part. So you are able to sense that they have thought through it differently. Push them a little. From your point of view, can you help them to move one notch higher in the thinking in the same line of thinking that they're doing? What will happen if you do this? How would you expand this further? You've got an amazing thought. It's a very good way of presenting. But how would you expand this to the next higher level? If you have to explain this further, how would you explain it? Something like that. I don't know the context, so you can put that in context and see how you can move their cognitive thinking to the next higher level. Your approach is fine, absolutely fine. Push them further in the cognitive thinking, and that's where you're encouraging them and moving them to empowerment. Where you can be hands-on. These will be very creative kids who can just do things on their own. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir, Shaheen again.
yes, Shaheen.
Sir, yesterday I was planning a lesson plan for the coming week. So I'm teaching English to grade 2. So I planned how will I active, because activity based is very, very important, because you are teaching small kids and particularly online. So you have to be very active so that everybody will be the participant and active participant. So I was thinking, how can I make them to understand every point? I have a lesson. I thought, because earlier I taught them noun as well as pronoun. So I planned an activity that I'll say every student just keep 2 colors with you. Any 2 colors, any crayons, any sketch pens or pencils or highlighters, keep 2. And I'll give, before starting a class, I'll give 2 minutes. Just start reading from the beginning silently at your own place, and color nouns with 1 color and color pronouns with another color. Then I will see who will mark more numbers, who will get as more as words. So with this, I'm trying to cover 3 things. One is understanding, so that they will focus completely.
Good.
The second thing is that they may get the revision of their noun. They may get, this is noun, this is pronoun. And then they may try to read as well. So because they are small kids, so it may help them to understand 2-3 things in less time, because time constraint is also very important.
Very good. Very good. So how would you encourage them further?
It will help them, because all will try to participate. I will be the winner in the class. Good. Because so this will help them to go more ahead. Every child wants to be the winner, that I will be the call, that you are the first, you are the second. So they may try to write more and more words. So this can help to others as well if they feel this is good activity.
Very good. But if you want to move the cognitive thinking to a higher level, what would you do in that exercise?
First of all, this is the beginning. We can say this is the beginning where we have to make them to come to this level. Then I can, yes. Then yes, further that we can say them that make a sentence on the particular word, or make something. If we'll try to speak, let me now do second activity where you have to use only these pronouns, and then try to verb, so they can go ahead.
Wonderful.
Only I think there are a lot of things to do, but online a time constraint is a question.
Yeah, that's always there. But
Yeah.
within the constancy, we can be supportive, like what you're doing right now, to start thinking. For example, a student spots 5 words in the paragraph, which has got 8 words, 8 nouns.
Right. Right.
How many more nouns can you pick up? Can you take another 2 minutes and see what is the basis on which you picked up this? Are there any other words in this paragraph which is a noun? Allow the student to think a little further. So the student again starts searching for nouns based on some parameter that the student has chosen for picking up the other words. So that way you can push that cognitive thinking further. Like beautiful exercise you're talking about, making sentences or saying out something, wonderful stuff. So keep doing all of that. The fundamental premise is, am I moving the cognitive thinking higher with my instruction? Or am I making procedural? For example, I've got 5 words, please write down 5 words. It's procedural. There's no cognitive thinking in that. Please write down these 5 words 5 times. Cognitive thinking is not that, it's procedural. So see what you can do to move the cognitive thinking, only then the students become smarter. Otherwise, they become rote students where they just reproduce what is there in the book as rote answers and then possibly get marks out of it. But if you want to really move them to a higher level of performance and efficiency, you will have to support them. And they should feel comfortable doing that experimentation. They should start exploring a little more. And that's when facilitation takes a different color. And that's why teachers have to move into a coaching style rather than staying in a teaching style. And that's what I've been advocating in my sessions. Move to a coaching style, which is equal to facilitation style. So essentially,
Is it so helpful, which I am saying that if I'll say them, is it their creativity that I am saying them search the words, use different colors?
absolutely, good one. That's why I said, whatever you're doing is amazing. Push it a little further. You're doing a great job.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Just be on the same frequency and push it further.
Right, sir.
Remember, you may want to use different methods because the learning styles may not be the same. The IQ may not be the same. What works for student A may not work for student B because the IQ could be lesser. Remember, when the IQ is lesser, from a brain perspective, the student goes into threat mode. I'm not able to be as good as Suresh. So when it goes to threat mode, the student will withdraw. So the motivation level will go down. The hormones are not secreted. So as a teacher, I should be able to pick up who is in style, who is in guiding, who is in explaining and so on. I should quickly able to box my students to myself and use the appropriate style so that the motivation level does not drop. Because students would have a tendency to compare themselves with other students and feel lower. When they feel lower, the motivation level will go down. That's when you immediately have to move to supportive behavior and encourage the student to come up. And you're absolutely there. It's just that you have only picked up a few things, and with a little bit of work, little bit of effort, you can pick up the other nouns. Just support the student and move the student up. The motivation level drop can be seen from body language cues. Observe body language cues and then see how you can push that person up. So like I said in the last session, see if you can identify which particular box the student is in, what type of style should I have to move the student towards encouraging and empowering. Some students at this point, like the example I gave last time, a student has come in from a vernacular background to an English mode of education. Now, when the student comes from a vernacular background, definitely there will be some resistance, lesser motivation, because the student is going to find the other students very comfortable speaking English, and this student is going to feel lower. That time, you may want to guide and support, which means move them into explaining higher supportive behavior because you move the motivation level up. And then move them into encouraging behavior. Tell them, Suresh, you can do it. You are capable of doing it. Just that you have to put in that extra effort. And I am there to support you while you put in that extra effort. That encouragement is what the student needs for the motivation level to be up. And then you can get the student up to speed. This is where these 4 quadrants become extremely important. I should know as a teacher when I should move into a different style so that I keep the motivation level up, encourage the student to move up and move that cognitive thinking up. So the faster or earlier they do that, the more supportive the student will feel. And as long as student is feeling very supportive and encouragement, motivation level will be up. When the motivation level is up, the learning is more. Then they can move into empowerment. So that's the principle that if you can follow, you will find that the coaching style really helps you to get the best out of your students. Just to explain that part, I'm going to use this slide. When you're teaching, what you're imparting first is knowledge. You're telling them what is this concept. Let's say you're talking about law of gravity. You're talking about any law. You're talking about some mathematics equation, knowledge. Then you're asking them to do it, and then the experience comes in. We are assuming that my knowledge will lead to enhancement of skill, and that will lead to some experience in the student. That's the path that we take as a teacher. Similarly, when you are mentoring the student, mentoring is where I come from my experience. This is how I did it, so I would like you to do it this way. Sharing from my experience. This again, I'm sharing from my knowledge. I'm sharing the skill set that I acquired and was successful because of that skill. I'm imparting that skill to you. I want you to use the skill and gain experience. This is what I do in mentoring. Whereas in teaching, it comes from directional behavior. I'm telling you what is the concept. I'm giving the knowledge input to you, allowing you to develop the skill related to that knowledge, and then gaining experience or expertise. Mentoring is I'm imparting knowledge not by bookish knowledge, but by my experience. This is the way I did it, and I would like you to do it this way. And by imparting that knowledge, I'm allowing the student to gain the skill and thereby the experience. When you move into coaching, which is facilitation style, I'm first asking the student to experiment. You come with some knowledge based on that experiment. And that knowledge, I'm going to push you to find out how you can get the skill from that knowledge. Which means there is already some impetus that the student has gained because of the experiment. And you're adding to that, like the one that Shaheen talked about. I'm first wanting you to find out the nouns in that particular paragraph. I'm not saying this is the paragraph and word number 5, 7, 20 are nouns. That is directions, which is what you do in teaching. But in coaching or facilitation, what we do is, like what Shaheen did, give a color pen. You find out what is it first. You first experiment. This is the definition of noun. So this particular word should be a noun, because this word is aligned with the definition of a noun. This word aligns to the definition of a verb. So I'm thinking of this to be a verb. So they are first experimenting it. And from that experiment, from their own understanding, they're gaining some knowledge. That is fine-tuned by you in the class, and then you get the skill. For example, if you want the child to understand how does a plant grow, in teaching, what do? You take that page number 25, which talks about how does a plant grow. You take a seed, go and plant the seed, water it, and then the sprout comes up, and then the plant comes up, it flowers and does all of that. This is theory in the book, which is knowledge. Now you ask the student to go and do that at home. That's skill. And then they gain experience from that skill. Reverse it. Ask them to go and take a seed, start planting it, see what happens. Come with that pot, maybe after 1 week, 10 days, 15 days. Now tell me, what did you see in this? Where did you start and what did you see? So the child will start talking about what the child has done over the last 10 days. I took the seed and then I planted it there. I went and saw it next morning. There was nothing there. My mom asked me to pour some water, so I poured some water. So the child is going to talk about the experience of bringing up that plant. So it understands that first I need to put a seed there. I need to ferment that. I need to have some manure or something put there. I need to make sure the soil is fresh. Then I see maybe after 5 days, 10 days, it takes about 5 days or 10 days for it to sprout. So these are all the knowledge it picks up from that experiment. So then it formulates. If I have to grow a tree, grow a plant, I need to have 15 days. I need to start from here and go up to this. So the skill it acquires from the experiment it has done and the knowledge created out of that experiment. So if you encourage the child to start planting the tree, go through that experience, get the knowledge from that experience. From that knowledge, can you develop the skill? And it is in the knowledge space that I'm going to add value as a teacher. So to enhance the thinking, I come in there and then explain to them how it can work. Then you will see that the child has already got some knowledge based on the experiment it has done. And from that experiment, the knowledge is gained, and that knowledge you are enhancing from your own capability of growing the plant or knowledge about growing the plant. So that's the fundamental change in paradigm or in a mindset that we all can bring in. Move from, if you want to move from teaching to facilitation. Tell me if this is clear or you want more explanation.
I think Suma.
It's clear, sir. This is Sumasi from St. Mary's School,
Yes.
Tina Tripura. So I'm one of a science teacher. So I'm handling for 6th standard and 7th standard and 8th standard.
Yeah.
So what you said, that's right, sir. Even if I'm planning for to do a lesson, for example, seeds, for example, a seed germination. So a week before itself, I'm going to inform for my students to sow a seed, take different kinds of a seeds. It may be an monocotyledon or dicotyledon like that. So and I just instruct them how to sow a seed and instruct the students to make a chart like this, what you observed in the first day and in the second day and the third day until when I start the lesson now. So the next week, they're going to bring whatever the plant that they're sowed in there. So this is how I'm going to encourage my students. That helpful for me. So before starting the lesson itself, the students come to know that the stages of the seed germination. But when I started to teach a physics, so I quite little fail to attain these type of stages, sir.
Yeah.
Can you please suggest me? So what are the skills that we are going to implement when I'm handling in a physics lesson, sir?
Good one. Just one thought here. You said you will tell them what happened on day one, what happened on day two, and ask them to write it down. That's instruction you will give. Is that what I heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In a day one, whether the seeds are sprouted or not, whether the seed coat are removed, whether it is growing or not, it absorbing a sunlight or a water, the level of a seed, whether it's swollen or not, like that, I'm going to instruct before itself, like as a picture wise. So they're going to experience that like as a lively in their home. With the help of their parents, they're going to do these things. At the end of a week, they are going to bring whatever the plans that they saw, they'll bring to the classroom. This is the work I'm assigning for my students.
Okay. You talked about 4 things, isn't it? You talked about, can you repeat those 3 or 4 things that you said? You will ask them to observe.
First is about instruction I'm going to give for a student.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'm going to make them to realize practically visualization. So what are the things that they are going to observe? Then stages, their
Okay,
experience.
so can you hold there? What are
Okay,
things
sir.
you're going to observe? Are you going to tell them what to observe?
Sir, I'm just instructing them what are the things that you are going to observe. You just make a note of it day wise.
Okay. Suppose you make that as an open question. How do you think you would remember? How do you know that? How would you capture the stages of the group? Instead of being very specific. Suppose you ask an open question. How would you capture the growth stages of this particular seed? Let them think about it. Which means I'm not telling them to capture it every day. I'm not telling them, please observe the seed at 7 o'clock in the morning. Leave it open. And then you can always tell them, no, why didn't you observe it at 7 o'clock? They may come with something more creative than possibly we have thought of. Some student may say, I was sitting by the plant every day or keeping the plant next to my bed every night and watching it every evening. Good. So that's something creative they're bringing. So in every instruction, see if there is a possibility of making that as a question so that you can possibly induce the creative juice in it. I'm just giving that as an example. May or may not work. You know the situations better as a teacher. But my only submission there is, see if you can, if there is an opportunity to induce that creative juice in the child, ask a question and deal with it. How would you observe the growth of this plant? If that is a valid question, just leave them with that question and see what happens. You'll get amazing stories from the child. This is what I did, and maybe I had a camera, I asked my father to just make a movie out of it, whatever. They'll come out with some creative ways of capturing it. So you may get some creative minds at work because of that question that you ask. Otherwise, we are guiding them. We are telling them, I want you to observe at 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and so on. Open it up a little more. I like the method that you're following, but I'm just asking you to think a little further and see if you can be a little more creative and push them into encouraging and empowering. So that habit of thinking through goes into every aspect of their life. So everything that they do, they'll start thinking through differently, which means that the cognitive thinking is getting impacted in the child. And slowly you will find the child moving towards empowering, where the child's thinking process does not require any directional support. They will do it themselves. As they start maturing, they will understand, okay, I need to think a little more. I need to think a little differently. I need to think a little openly. This is what my teacher would expect from me. So let me start thinking about it. So when that happens, they get empowered. They're doing it on their own, where you can take your hands off. I know that this child would think differently. Start focusing on the other child and see if you can move them from guiding towards empowerment. That's my 2 cents to say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Definitely, I make my students to think innovatively in the next class.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. She's very good. Anybody else who's got some thought on this?
I can ask Jaya to talk on this slide. Jaya, Pratham International School.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
I do teach biology to 10th.
Yeah.
And during seed germination, I told them to soak the methi seeds, and many of them grew them. And they sent the pictures also of it during this pandemic time.
Yeah.
But not many, 2 or 3 of them grew, and they used for their cooking purpose also. In that way, I made them to observe. Even ragi and methi was given. One was dicot and another one was monocot. So the concept was clear by looking into that.
Wonderful.
Yes.
How many of your students you would put them where your style has to be guided?
We had around 18 kids. In that, 6 of them come up with the ideas. Others were little bit alert. They were not showing that much interest. But in one of them prepared PPT also. So few of them involved in.
So what style do you think you have to use with the others who didn't come out with their experiment? Among these 4 styles you see on screen.
Involvement is required, sir.
Yeah,
And
18 students. How many of them you would need to guide? How many of them you would need to explain? For how many you would need to encourage, and how many are in the empowering stage?
Around 6 of them were really good with in interaction and even getting the point.
Where would you put them?
They come up with ideas, sir. Some are like really. mm, uh,
So the
uh,
style that you would have with them is encouraging. Is that the style you would have? Just support them because they already have the idea.
yes, sir. It will support, and some of them are not in regular to the class.
So you would move
Even
style one with them.
network issues and other things. They won't show interest, and even parent support is also not there.
So you would move with style one or style two or style three with those children. What style?
For them, style 2 and 3 only will work out.
Okay.
So that is.
More than three, I would.
Yes, sir.
Style two is better
Okay.
because
Okay.
they need a bit of directional support.
Yes, sir.
Motivation level is down, you said, and also support. So
Yes,
we
sir.
need a combination of directive and supportive behavior. So style two is the style you should follow with them, which means you tell them what to do and also tell them, I know you can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hardware. So you can always sort it out. But
Yes, sir.
whenever your network is good, connect with me. I'll help you out.
Yes, sir.
That's a
Yes,
supportive
sir.
behavior.
Sure, sir. I'll do it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir,
Anyone else?
Namaste, Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. This is Deepa Shriram.
Yes.
Actually, I just want to add one more thing here. The same what he said just before it was actually moving to rest. The children won't show involvement and all those things. But what we made, we didn't ask them to plant the seeds or something like that. We told them to take photograph of the seedling peeping out. And we asked them to give a kind of work to put it as a DP and status. You won't believe that all started doing it, almost 80 to 90%.
Very good.
Then they started sharing. We said when it is coming out, you send that photo as a birthday gift.
Very good.
Giving some kind of using Canvas app or something like that. Then started doing it. And we also conducted the best photography award. And all started doing looking very keen, the germination of seeds or something like that.
Okay.
This is what I want to add.
Wonderful.
The present interest combining with the learning.
Wonderful. Just look at the statements that you made. We asked them to take photographs. We asked them to put that in the DP. We asked them to send it out and so on. Yeah. These are directional behavior. If you have to convert that to supportive behavior, what would you do?
So here I want to add one thing, that whenever we are teaching any class, we have to use all the styles.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
We don't have all students alike. So every student develops according to his or her this we can say inner potential.
Absolutely. That's the reason why I said these styles are dynamic.
Right.
You have to be using all the 4 styles. That's the reason why I said, see if you can find out what style works with which child and how do I move the child from style 1 to style 2, style 3. Because our ultimate objective is to see if you can move the children to empowering box.
And also we can help them, that we will give them once I gave them direction, that you, for example, I'll take my example, that if I'll tell them that you have to find nouns and pronouns. Now you can do one thing, you can show me your potential, how you will present it to me.
Absolutely.
Who will present that will be the creativity.
How would be, that's what, just adding to what Deepa was saying, how would you showcase that this particular sprout is coming out?
Right.
They would bring the DP, they would possibly post with that, or whatever.
Even I may get 30 results from them. All students will stay at their home and they will do their creativity, they will do their thinking, and will get different things to learn, to understand, even to others. And also we can share that work together in a group, and all will be appreciated.
Absolutely. There could also be one student, if father is in movie making, they'll make a small movie out of that.
Right.
That will also come in.
Right.
So instead of telling them, using a directive behavior and say, put that in your DP or take a photograph and send it to me, take it and find out if you can send it as a birthday gift, make that as an open question. How would you showcase this growth of this particular seed.
Sir, excuse me. Actually, one child, she took the interest of doing the terrace gardening.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That child could be in the empowering stage. They've gone beyond your instructions. That's a classic example of a child already in stage 4, which is where I would possibly take my hands off and say, do this. I think you are great. You're doing something extremely good. So how would you do this creatively? Don't give any instructions at all. You will find the child has got that excellent creative juice and the motivation level where the hormones are getting secreted enormously in the brain. They will come out some creative thoughts. That's why I keep saying, see if you can spot the child, find out which particular box they are in, change my style of working with them and moving the child from one to another. My objective as a teacher should be to see if I can move as many students as possible from wherever they are to being empowered, which means they are like the one that Deepa talked about, bringing some creative stuff and coming out some creative stuff, which means their cognitive thinking capability is really mature. Can I move every student to that level of cognitive thinking capability, which means I support them. I use a facilitation style to really move them to that level. And fundamentally, what you do there is ask creative questions. When you give directions, you are in teaching mode, like I said earlier. In coaching style, I keep asking questions to move the child's thinking. How would you showcase this? Okay, I will take a snap. What would you do with that snap? I will possibly send it to my friends. What occasion will you send it to your friends? Then the birthday will come. Instead of telling the student, please send it on your birthday or send it on friend's birthday, how would you encourage that? How would you encourage your friends to start growing things? Maybe I'll take a picture of this, I'll take a movie of this and send it to my friends group and encourage them to start coming out with growing plans, which means I'm having a creative thought of taking a picture of this growth stage by stage. Every 2 days, I'll take a picture, send it to my WhatsApp group of friends, allow them to start doing simple experiments like this and encourage them from my own experience of growing this plant. So this is how you're possibly trying to move this child from encouraging quadrant to the empowering quadrant. Likewise, in every subject, if you can do that, you will find that the children with the facilitation methodology will be able to move further to a different way of working, different cognitive capability. And fundamentally, always remember that whenever you are moving them to a different level, you will find that the brain starts secreting hormones which are driving motivation. If you people are interested, I can go a little more into brain theory in the next session to help you understand what exactly happens when you work like this in this, but that will be a little intense. So that's why I'm not touching on that. But consciously, if you can work between directional and supportive behavior, work between facilitation and teaching, more of facilitation and less of teaching, you will find that your children will be a lot more informed, a lot more creative as they grow up to the next level. Any questions, please, or anything that anybody wants to add to what I said?
Sir, I would like to add. The way how I have done in the classes, I have opened the breakout rooms, 6 breakout rooms, and I've given the names according to the Bloom's taxonomy. The group number 1, they will frame the questions to remember like one-word answers, one word to get one word, and group number 2, all those like a Bloom's taxonomy. Okay. Then that I given the freedom for the children to select the group. So there I have understood children have selected, many students have selected first group in the remember level only. And only one child was in the creative last higher order thinking. Very and a few more, and very less student in understanding skill also, the understanding level. Many children in the third group in applying. So after in the group they discussed and they came out and they told the story, how they will apply the moral in the story to their real life and all in the third group. In first group, as usual, they have framed some questions to remember. So they have done. So in that activity, I have understood which child is in which level.
Very good.
Then I just told in the next lesson, those who are in first level, if possible, try to be in a group number 2 and group number 3 as the next activity. So I gave them the freedom to go to the higher order thinking. When the children came back from the breakout room and explaining, that has motivated the children who were in the first group to go to the second group, a third group actually.
Very good.
So then it was really wondering for me. That is easy method to understand which level the child is interested.
Absolutely.
And then we can push them by motivating, by see how they are applying to their real life. And they started real life stories to tell. My grandfather was like that. So this has happened in my life like that, applying. And again, most of and many students were not in evaluation group. And in creative group, only one child was there. So that was really eye-opening for me to know the level. Many times we'll be telling to know the level and push them. To know itself was very difficult. I just tried last week and I'm still exploring in that. So how to push better in a better way.
Thank you for
Is it right, sir? Is
Really
it right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the broad idea behind what you did was you are trying to move towards facilitation and allowing them to learn on their own, experiment, and then pick up the knowledge and adding to that knowledge. Absolutely. Just aligns with what we've been talking in this session today. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. Really appreciate the effort you've taken. So fundamentally, you may ask yourself one question. Whatever I'm doing in the session with that student, am I facilitating or am I teaching? One. Second, where is the student in these 4 quadrants? And what do I do to move the student from wherever the student is towards empowered? Question number 2. 3. For moving towards coaching style or facilitation style, please ask open questions. Hold yourself back from giving directions. Can you convert that to a question? And allow the student to think rather than you giving away the answer. If you can follow these 3, you will easily transit from teaching to facilitation. If you want to try this week and share your experience with us in the next session so that we're able to find out what more we need to do to really move towards facilitation and be comfortable there.
Very good, Suresh. Thank you so much. Next week, we will discuss on open-ended questions, how to frame the open-ended questions. We'll do
Even ma'am, this time I have same question that what is the difference between open-ended and the closed-ended?
Okay, I can do that next week. I can also, but what I would want is, I want to do that more as a workshop where I would want you to ask open questions and I can be the client. You could ask, we can play it out next week.
Yes.
I will take this and the whole session, and that's one of the fundamental things you need to do to move to facilitation style. And I'll help you with asking open questions.
Yes.
So can we say here like that open-ended is only different like this, that we will keep the platform open to them? For example, if I am asking you something, I'll keep open environment to you or open world to you that you can go to any limit. Am I right?
Fundamentally, the difference is closed question is where it has got a finite answer.
Okay.
So if I would ask you, Shaheen, shall we go for lunch or dinner? That's a closed question because you have a choice between lunch and dinner only.
Right.
Whereas, what do we have for lunch? That's an open question. Because the entire menu is before you. You can choose what you want. Rather than say, tell me between chapati and dal, what do you want to have? That's
so it's closed. It's closed, yeah.
When I limit the choice to you, then it becomes a closed question. When I ask a question which explores, which allows you to explore and come out with a detailed answer, then I'm asking open question. In coaching and facilitation style, you always or predominantly ask open questions.
Right.
That moves the thinking forward. I'll give you more examples and more concepts on this in the next session.
Sure.
So before I close, just want to repeat what I said at the beginning of the session because some of you joined in a little late. I'm doing another series of talk on cognitive development in children. This happens on Saturdays between 4 and 5. What it entails is, I'm talking about some theoretical base on how does a child grow, how does the cognitive thinking of the child grow, and what do we need to do and are doing as caregivers. When I say caregiver, I'm talking about parent, teacher, or a caregiver, anybody. So understanding the fundamentals behind the way we are dealing with children, why are we behaving the way they are behaving? Why is a child behaving the way they are behaving? How do we move the child from where he or she is to where they can be, which is a higher level of cognitive thinking? So this is open to anybody who wants to join. In case anybody is interested, you can leave your interest with Sumati and I could possibly pick it up from here.
Yes, teachers. Thank you so much. Next week, again, we'll meet on 8 a.m. Please join with us for the coaching session. Thank you.
Thank you and have a wonderful week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah. Deepa, I will keep in touch. I will send you the invite for 4 p.m.
Thank you. And sorry, sir, I came late. It was delayed and I missed some of the sessions also.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I will keep that to
Sure.
join in on
Sure.
time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumati ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Take care.